initiative to bring together large corporations like Microsoft with the government of Singapore and also with one of our tech pioneers is really one of the strengths of the World Economic Forum and its Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution. This co-designing process really creates a lot of value add, and we kind of hope that these case studies will help fast track and accelerate and scale these projects around the world, because the Fourth Industrial Revolution is waiting for no one. So I would love to hear more from Diana. If you could kind of tell us a little bit more about the importance of tech governance and having that right up front in this process, and then maybe some of the challenges and opportunities when your company went to implement this framework or test it out.
That's right. Thank you very much. So it's really a pleasure to be here. It's been a wonderful experience to contribute to the framework and to some of the examples as well. So at Sweden, what we have been doing for the past few years is really providing regulation in a box for the financial industry. And regulation, with all of its complexities and all the different colors and shades that you can find globally, is a very interesting topic to try to tackle. And it was very clear for us from the beginning that we would have to leverage on the best that technology had to offer in the industry if we wanted to be pioneers and if we wanted to be innovators. So obviously looking at AI, NLP, machine learning, automation tools was basically very high on our agenda as a company. So what we realized very quickly, obviously the governance reality around implementing AI was very important. There is a reality around regulation and the repercussions it can have for a particular customer of ours in the financial industry in terms of fines. What it can also have in terms of implications for consumers is actually quite relevant in terms of the risk that can bring to the industry. So doing this properly and bringing the right amount of governance was really essential for us from the beginning. So right governance in many ways also means taking the right responsibility. And I think there is a reality that it is the job of every innovator to really take a very hard look as to what their innovation is bringing to the market and the impact it has in society. So what we're talking about is really self-assessing yourself and making sure that the technology you're developing is fundamentally having a positive impact on humanity. So the reality with AI, it is pioneering ground. So effectively, this is a new world for everybody. So we're all innovators, we're all pioneers in this conversation. So it is very important that we all start the conversation right from the beginning, and actually the model framework around here and the conversations we're having around the self-assessment guide is also how you will be doing this positively as a society. So what we found and why we've really appreciated this work and why we found that it was really compelling for the industry is because the devil is in the detail in a lot of these conversations. When you create technology, you know that when it comes to AI and machine learning, there's a lot of detail, and sometimes in these conversations they're usually done at a very high level, so actually nothing effectively progresses. So what's really interesting here is that the framework, so the model framework really goes into a level of detail that we hadn't really seen before. And it's very commendable from the Singaporean government and the WEF to have been looking at the amount of detail. And like we were saying, to really look at companies that are of very different sizes, of very different parts in their journey of innovation, and including companies like ours, which are effectively innovating in the space as we go along. So we found 4 key challenges that we actually have seen the model really addressing very well and precisely. One of them is obviously in data. So the quality of data is something that's very well understood as part of the process. So understanding the lineage of data is very well addressed. Minimizing inherent bias, which is actually a topic that we feel passionate about, because obviously bias in the data and the data not being revised from the beginning and on a regular basis could actually have repercussions that are quite dire, I would say, for society in general. The other problem that we found was very much thinking about human involvement. So do you actually have a human in the loop, out of the loop, over the loop? There's a lot of realities around positive and false negatives. There's a lot of detail around all of those things. And so what you want really with a framework is the right amount of flexibility in order to think about all the different use cases that you can encounter. Because from one country to even one system to the other, to one algorithm to the other, to one industry to the other, the level of complexity that you find in creating algorithms is actually very, very big. So a framework that works for the industry, or for any industry effectively, has to be a framework that is flexible and really allows for the right level of detail and scenarios that you can encounter. The other point is very much ethics and trust, which Brad was mentioning as well. the point around ethics, I would say, is actually, so we always speak about ethics around AI and how to do this properly, but the ethics also comprehends taking along in the journey a certain amount of, layman language and explainability almost to consumers to really understand what this AI is going to do in their life. And so addressing those issues in the right way fundamentally means that AI is also going to be adopted at a much faster pace and being embraced rather than being resisted. So one of the things that the framework was trying to really address, aside from really doing AI in a responsible way and at scale, was also to really enhance the consumer's understanding and confidence around the acceptance of AI. And that is very much in line around the fourth industrial revolution, upskilling people, making sure that they come along in the process of a society that is basically going to be changing with technology. And the last point very much is the element of liability. So as we all start using AI more, where is the liability and whose fault is what when it comes to generating certain models? And obviously all this ends up coming down to explainability and explainability in itself. So there are certain things that are very explainable, but there are certain other things that are more subjective and difficult to capture. And one of the things that we really loved around the framework was really the opportunity of looking at your internal governance and understanding in detail how to restructure that in order to get to what liability you're taking in as a company when you're actually adopting AI. So from our perspective, this is a huge success story. This is really a wonderful example of public and private collaboration, so very much at the core of the stakeholder capitalism that the WEF really promotes. I think that one of the things I was mentioning before is that we are all innovators now when it comes to AI. And I would really urge and invite, I would say, more governments to take part in this wonderful effort that the Singaporean government has started to lead, because it's really something that we need a lot more of. And companies to really join this movement of effectively setting standards for the industry when it comes to data and artificial intelligence, and the way we do this for more interoperable systems, where effectively you're really looking at a world where we're promoting an effort for ethics, for AI, and a responsible use of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We have a few moments for questions from the audience. We have about 2 minutes, so if there is a show of hands, if we have anything. If not, I might let our panel go and give them 2 minutes back. But we might have one. We have in the white jacket. And could you just tell us what news outlet you're from?
I'm a journalist from Phoenix New Medium from China, and I have a question to Microsoft's Mr. Smith. And we know nowadays facial recognition has caused considerable controversy with Google, and how to keep a balance between the improvement of technology like AI, 5G, and the law. I want this question.
Okay. And then do we have another question? I just want to make sure we can hear both of them, just given the time period. Can you just pass that mic down?
Only a very quick one.
Okay.
National Public Radio, Switzerland. The definition of AI, how did you settle on that one? Because that's one of the core parts in writing regulation in this kind.
So we have one question that's about definitions, and then another question that's more around the governance structure and why that's really important for facial recognition, which I think is a very hot topic around the world. So, Kay, did you want to just give us a quick bit about the governance, and then we can turn to Microsoft?
Yes, surely. So yes, how do you define AI is a major part of any work that we do. And at the moment, we're really looking at machine learning tools. And so when we were writing this, we have a definition of artificial intelligence that actually really looks at some of these machine learning tools, for example, like facial recognition, like natural language processing. Just before I hand on to Brad, on your question, we do actually have a facial recognition project that we're running out of our team and looking at the governance of that. Brad.
Sure, and I'll just say very briefly, there was some press report earlier today about debate between Google and Microsoft about facial recognition, and the truth is I actually think our two companies mostly agree on these things. Although we happened to be in Brussels, never in the same room yesterday at the same time, and apparently answered the same question differently, which was enough to lead to media scrutiny or suggestions that we were debating. But I'd really build on what Kay said. From our perspective, facial recognition technology is both very important, and it's the kind of thing that can create both benefits and challenges, and if misused, can create harms. And therefore, it is very important to have governance of it. And it's in fact, I think, precisely the kind of technology that benefits from the type of framework that we're talking about here. Ultimately, I think it's the type of technology that will require not only voluntary application of frameworks by the companies that are developing it or deploying it, but it will also require rules that are embodied in laws to ensure that it's used well. And I think that this kind of work is, in fact, the kind of guidepost that will help us develop these.
Well, thank you very much. We're on a tight schedule today. I'm sure everyone is going to go back into the cold for their next session. But I would like to thank my distinguished panel for your time and for your thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, we got an applause.